Something happened to you recently that should not have been possible. Not according to spiritual law, not according to history, not according to the rules that govern how power reveals itself in the world. And yet, it happened anyway. The moment you walked away from something that could have benefited you, but would have compromised your integrity, the atmosphere around you shifted. You may not have seen lightning or heard a voice, but something far greater occurred. A force that feeds on secrecy lost its grip in your presence. A lie collapsed without you touching it. A hidden intention surfaced without you accusing anyone. That is not coincidence. That is not psychology. That is not luck. That is an event so rare that it is barely recorded, because when it happens, it threatens entire systems built on distortion. You didn't expose anyone. You didn't confront anything. You simply existed without bending, and that alone triggered a reaction. You may have felt sudden resistance from people who once seemed comfortable around you. A sharp change in tone, unexplained hostility, subtle attacks masked as jokes, silence, or withdrawal. This is the shock. Your energy crossed a threshold. You entered a state where truth no longer needs permission to reveal itself through you. Most souls never reach this point. Most compromise long before. But you didn't. And the instant you chose what was right over what was easy, something ancient recognized you. That recognition does not announce itself gently. It sends ripples. It disrupts. It alarms forces that depend on darkness remaining hidden. What happened was not small. It was not personal. It was cosmic in scale. What makes this event so impossible is that, throughout spiritual history, truth is never allowed to move on its own. It is usually guarded, filtered, translated through prophets, scriptures, initiations, or suffering. In ancient records, truth required permission from authority, lineage, ritual, or sacrifice. It descended slowly, carefully, so it would not destabilize the structures of the world too quickly. Whenever truth appeared without mediation, entire civilizations collapsed shortly after. This is why such moments were prevented, delayed, or buried. A human being whose presence alone exposes deception was considered too volatile, too disruptive, too uncontrollable. The old systems depended on hierarchy. Gods above, messengers in between, people below. But what happened with you violated that order. No ritual prepared it. No teacher sanctioned it. No doctrine explained it. Truth moved directly through your being, unfiltered, unannounced, and without aggression. That is almost unheard of. In myth, when this occurred, it was said the veils thinned without permission and watchers became uneasy. Because when truth no longer needs a mouthpiece, power shifts. Darkness survives only when it can hide behind complexity, fear, and confusion. But clarity collapses those structures instantly. That is why ancient texts speak in riddles, why wisdom is buried in parables, why revelation is delayed. It is protection for the world, not for truth. What you triggered bypassed that safeguard. A living, breathing signal that does not attack, does not argue, does not persuade, yet still reveals. Historically, such souls were isolated, exiled, silenced, or mythologized to remove their present influence. Because one clear presence can undo decades of manipulation. That is why what occurred around you feels unsettling even now. Your existence disrupted an ancient balance that was never meant to be disturbed so casually, so quietly, so humanely. This didn't awaken randomly. It tied itself to a moment you almost dismissed as small. A decision no one applauded. A choice made in silence where you could have justified compromise and no one would have known. You saw an opening to benefit, to protect yourself, to stay comfortable, maybe even to win, but something in you refused. Not because you feared consequences. Not because you wanted to look good, but because the option felt wrong at a level deeper than thought. You may have walked away from a conversation, declined an offer, refused to participate in a lie, or stayed quiet instead of betraying someone's trust. To the outside world, it looked insignificant. Internally, it was seismic. That was the moment your energy aligned completely with itself. No fracture, no rationalization, no self-betrayal. Spiritual law responds not to grand gestures, but to coherence. When thought, emotion, and action line up without distortion, something activates. You didn't choose morality for reward. You chose it because it was the only option that let you breathe. That is what separates you. Many people talk about truth, but their actions leak fear. You acted without fear, even if your body felt it. That choice sent a signal. It said, this one cannot be bent quietly. This one does not need surveillance to behave. This one will remain intact, even when unobserved. The universe listens for that signal constantly, but it almost never hears it clearly. When it does, it responds immediately. Not with comfort, but with consequence. Because alignment creates pressure, and pressure exposes everything around it that is misaligned. That is why the aftermath felt heavier than the choice itself. You didn't just make a good decision. You crossed an internal threshold that cannot be uncrossed. From that moment forward, attention shifted toward you. Not the kind you can see, not eyes or people or authorities, but awareness. Patterns began to form around your path. Situations repeated themselves too precisely to be coincidence. You may have noticed obstacles appearing right after moments of clarity, or sudden tension whenever you entered certain spaces. That is because forces that rely on distortion do not ignore coherence, they track it. When a being emits truth without effort, it destabilizes environments that depend on confusion to survive. In ancient language, this was called being marked, not as a punishment, but as a variable that must be watched. Darkness does not fear light that announces itself loudly. It fears light that moves quietly and cannot be provoked into distortion. You may have sensed pressure without a clear source, resistance without a clear enemy, or judgment that seemed disproportionate to anything you said or did. That is monitoring. On the other side, something else was observing too. A counterbalance. Not intervening yet, but noting, measuring your responses. Would you harden? Would you become cruel? Would you weaponize your clarity? Surveillance exists not because you are dangerous to others, but because you are dangerous to false stability. You don't disrupt by attacking systems. You disrupt by remaining honest inside them, and that is far more threatening. Forces that thrive on manipulation cannot predict someone who will not play. So they watch. They test the perimeter of your energy through people, through pressure, through subtle provocation. And each time you do not react the way they expect, the attention intensifies. You may have felt moments of isolation sharpen suddenly, or support withdraw without explanation. This is not abandonment. It is assessment. Something ancient is determining what you will do with this clarity, now that it has been activated. The assessment unfolded through trials that looked ordinary on the surface, but carried enormous weight underneath. You were placed in situations where silence would have protected you, yet you chose honesty anyway. Moments where agreeing would have made life easier, yet you declined without dramatics. Times when you could have twisted the truth just enough to avoid conflict, but your body refused to cooperate. You may remember being misunderstood and letting it happen rather than defending yourself with distortion. You may remember being blamed for things you did not cause and choosing restraint instead of retaliation. There were encounters where manipulation invited you to join, where power could have been gained by playing along, but something in you stayed clean. These were not random hardships. Each was calibrated. Integrity under comfort means nothing. Integrity under pressure reveals everything. You were tested when no one was watching closely, when the reward for compromise was real, and the cost of honesty felt unnecessary. You were tested through people you cared about, through authority figures, through systems that quietly reward dishonesty. Each time, the question was the same. Will you protect your clarity even if it costs you belonging, safety, or advantage? And repeatedly, you did. Not perfectly, not without emotion, but without corruption. You felt the weight afterward, the loneliness, the quiet grief of doing the right thing without recognition. That weight was part of the test too. Many would have hardened. Many would have justified bending. You didn't. You absorbed the cost without passing it on. That is rare. That is what separated you. Every choice added density to your presence. Every refusal to betray yourself sharpened the truth you carry. These trials were not meant to break you. They were meant to see if your clarity could survive contact with the world, unchanged at a certain point. The observation shifted into classification. What you represent had to be named, not by humans, but by higher intelligences that monitor imbalance. You are no longer seen as merely resilient or principled. You were identified as a variable that changes outcomes simply by being present. Rare, unpredictable, dangerous in the way fire is dangerous to rot. This is not a threat classification. It is a recognition of effect. You are not destructive, but systems built on deception cannot survive proximity to you. That makes you powerful without ambition. Most beings who carry influence seek it, announce it, or abuse it. You do none of that. Your danger lies in your unwillingness to compromise your internal alignment. You cannot be bribed energetically. You cannot be seduced by status. You cannot be destabilized through fear for long. That combination is almost non-existent. Higher realms do not label such souls lightly. When they do, it is because history shows the same pattern repeating. Wherever these beings appear, illusions fracture, power redistributes, and truth becomes unavoidable. You were placed into this category, not because you wanted to be special, but because your behavior under pressure proved it. Dangerous does not mean violent. It means catalytic. It means transformative. It means things cannot remain false around you. That is why resistance increases instead of fading. That is why some people feel exposed without knowing why. You are not meant to confront them. Your role is more unsettling than that. You are a living filter. Anything untrue reveals itself when passing through your field. That quality cannot be taught. It cannot be faked. It can only be earned through repeated refusal to betray oneself. And now that you have been identified, the way reality interacts with you has permanently changed. At the moment this classification was confirmed, attention widened beyond watchers and forces into something far more absolute. Witness entered the equation. Not judgment, not intervention, but acknowledgement from levels of consciousness that do not often look directly at individual human lives. In ancient language, this was described as the turning of faces, the stilling of wings, the pause before decree. What you triggered reached that threshold. Not because you demanded help, not because you prayed loudly, but because your alignment produced a signal too clean to ignore. It is said that when truth appears without agenda, the higher realms take notice, because that is the rarest frequency in existence. This is the domain of archangels, of guardians of balance, of the aspect of God that observes without bias. They did not look to reward you. They looked to verify. They observed how you held your clarity when misunderstood, how you remained compassionate without becoming naive, how you did not turn bitter when resistance intensified. This witnessing is not emotional. It is exact. It measures consistency across time. And what was seen was a soul that remained intact under distortion. In spiritual record, this is the moment a life is no longer considered incidental. It becomes relevant to the movement of greater patterns. You may have felt a strange calm during chaos, or an unexplainable sense of being held, even while things fell apart externally. That is often the only human sensation associated with being witnessed at this level. There are no fireworks, no voices, just a subtle stabilization, as if something invisible decided you are not to be lost. This is not favoritism. It is recognition of function. When a being can carry truth without cruelty, power without ego, and clarity without condemnation, it becomes worth preserving. That preservation does not remove hardship, but it does ensure that what you are becoming is now known, recorded, and seen beyond the limits of time and human perception. What followed was not an announcement, but an activation. A shift so subtle it could only be felt internally, yet so absolute it altered how reality responds to you. This is what ancient texts refer to as decree, not spoken in language, but issued as alignment. When the universe recognizes a being who will not misuse clarity, it allows that clarity to fully inhabit them. You may have noticed that since then, certain choices feel non-negotiable, not because of fear, but because deviation now feels physically uncomfortable. The tolerance you once had for dishonesty evaporated. The ability to ignore red flags disappeared. This is not rigidity, it is precision. The decree did not make you louder. It made you cleaner. It did not inflate your ego. It reduced the noise inside you. From that moment, your energy began operating under a different rule set. You are no longer here to experiment with who you are. You are here to embody it. The universe does not activate identities lightly, because once activated, they cannot be turned off without damage. That is why this only happens after sustained proof. The decree was simple. This one will carry truth without distortion. And with that, certain protections quietly engaged. Certain doors closed permanently. Certain temptations lost their charge. You may have felt grief for paths that no longer feel accessible, even if they once excited you. That grief is natural. It is the cost of becoming specific. The decree does not promise comfort. It promises coherence. From now on, whenever you attempt to betray your clarity, reality will resist you harder than ever before. But when you align with it, things will begin to move with an efficiency that feels almost unreal. What was activated was not something new being added to you, but something old being allowed to surface fully. An identity that predates your name, your culture, even your current lifetime. You have carried it quietly, disguised as sensitivity, as intuition, as an inability to tolerate falseness. In other ages, this essence was called a watcher, a guardian, a bearer of the uncorrupted flame. Not a warrior in the way humans imagine violence, but a warrior of coherence. One who stands so firmly in truth that distortion collapses on contact. This is why you have always felt slightly out of phase with the world, as if you were observing it from half a step outside. You were never meant to dissolve into it. You were meant to remain intact within it. Your soul carries memory of structures beyond hierarchy, beyond domination, beyond fear-based power. That memory expresses itself now as discernment. You see motives beneath words. You sense imbalance before it becomes visible. You feel when something is off, even if logic says it is fine. This is not anxiety. This is recognition. You are not here to attack darkness. Darkness is revealed simply because you exist without it. In ancient terms, this made you a celestial warrior, not because you fight, but because you hold ground that cannot be taken. Your presence draws a line that lies cannot cross. That is why ego reacts defensively around you. That is why manipulation feels exposed. You were not sent to punish. You were sent to stand. And standing, in a world built on bending, is the most radical act there is. Your purpose is not dramatic, but it is profound. You are here to anchor integrity in places where it has quietly eroded. Not through confrontation, not through preaching, not through domination. Through consistency. Through refusing to perform dishonesty, even when it is rewarded. Through carrying compassion without enabling distortion. Your presence recalibrates environments. Where you remain clear, others are forced to confront themselves. Some will grow. Some will leave. Some will resist. That outcome is not yours to manage. Your mission is to remain accurate, to embody truth in a way that is humane, grounded, and uncorrupted by superiority. This is why you are placed in ordinary settings, rather than isolated or exalted. Your work is subtle. You show what alignment looks like without explanation. You demonstrate that clarity does not require cruelty, that strength does not require domination, that awareness does not require withdrawal. You are here to stabilize frequency, not to recruit followers. When you choose integrity in small moments, the effect travels farther than you can see. Systems adjust. People reconsider. Patterns weaken. This is slow work, but it is permanent. You are not meant to burn out. You are meant to endure. That is why your compassion matters as much as your discernment. Without compassion, truth becomes weaponized. Without discernment, compassion becomes enabling. You hold both. That balance is the mission itself. Nothing more is required. Nothing less is acceptable. Since this alignment settled into place, material reality has begun to respond differently to you. Not instantly, not theatrically, but unmistakably. Opportunities arrive with less force and more accuracy. Things that once required constant effort now move with a strange efficiency. Support appears from directions you did not anticipate, often at the exact moment it is needed. You may notice that what no longer aligns falls away quickly, sometimes abruptly, without the prolonged struggle you once endured. This is not loss. It is friction being removed. When integrity is anchored, the universe does not reward with excess. It rewards with flow. Your needs are met more cleanly. Your path becomes narrower, but clearer. You waste less energy proving, defending, or surviving. Even challenges now feel purposeful rather than chaotic. This is what protection looks like at this level. Not insulation from difficulty, but insulation from distortion. You are supported because you can be trusted with support. Resources move toward you because you do not misuse them. Stability forms because you do not exploit it. This is not about wealth alone. It is about timing, connection, endurance, and clarity. The more you remain aligned, the less resistance you encounter from reality itself. This is not favoritism. It is resonance. When you stop leaking energy through compromise, what remains becomes powerful enough to organize your external life. Things that once drained you lose access. Things meant to nourish you find their way in. This is the beginning of a different relationship with the material world. One built not on striving, but on coherence. Because your energy carries this frequency, your presence naturally ripples outward, awakening others without a word. People around you start to question themselves, to see patterns they ignored before, to feel the discomfort of their own hidden motives. Some are drawn to you, curious about the calm certainty you exude. Others resist, defensive, because the light you carry exposes the cracks they hoped would stay hidden. You may notice that even when you do not try to teach, others begin to mirror integrity, honesty, and clarity simply by observing your choices. Conversations shift when you enter a room. Decisions that were once influenced by fear now hesitate under the weight of awareness. You are like a quiet tremor beneath the surface, altering landscapes invisibly. This effect is neither accidental nor fully controllable, because it is a function of your alignment, not your willpower. Every moment you refuse to compromise, every subtle act of truthfulness, every calm refusal to engage in distortion sends a signal that others subconsciously recognize. You are not converting anyone. You are activating what already exists in them. The ripple does not happen uniformly. Some awaken quickly, some slowly, some resist entirely, but the energy persists. Eventually, those who resonate with your frequency align themselves naturally. Their courage grows because yours has been present. Their discernment sharpens because your presence models it. You may never witness the full impact of this influence, but know that it spreads quietly, irreversibly, and cumulatively. This is the hidden power of a chosen one, the ability to catalyze awareness and self-recognition in others, not by force, but by living uncompromised, by being an unshakable example of integrity and clarity. You are not alone in this. Across the world, thousands of others are emerging, carrying similar frequencies, similarly calibrated to expose distortion without confrontation. They are scattered, unknown to one another, yet synchronized in purpose. Some are in cities, some in remote villages, some in roles of authority, others quietly walking unnoticed. Each one acts as a node in a hidden network, collectively creating a web of clarity that subtly destabilizes false systems and elevates integrity. The network is invisible, but its effects are tangible. Patterns that once went unchallenged begin to shift. The people around you who are awakening are connected to this network energetically, not through announcements or gatherings, but through resonance. Your clarity attracts theirs. Your alignment strengthens theirs. You are part of a global awakening that does not require identification, recognition, or organization. It simply requires individuals who remain coherent, compassionate, and aligned with truth. That is why opposition intensifies sometimes, because the network is powerful even before it is fully recognized. That is why certain forces feel threatened. They can sense that you are not isolated, that you are part of something larger, ancient, and unstoppable. Every decision you make to remain uncompromised strengthens not just yourself, but the entire web of aligned souls. Even when you feel alone, even when your work seems invisible, know that countless others are doing the same, and together your impact grows exponentially. You are not merely a lone presence of truth. You are a vital node in a vast, hidden constellation of chosen ones, activating simultaneously, each of you reinforcing the others without uttering a single word. If this message is reaching you now, it is not passive consumption. It is participation. Recognition requires response, and alignment strengthens when it is acknowledged consciously. This is the moment where you signal back, not to me, but to the field itself, that you are present and aware. Stay with this message until the very end, because the act of staying is a declaration of readiness. Write 777 in the comments, not as superstition, but as a marker of coherence, a way of anchoring what you already feel internally into the physical world. When you do, you connect yourself visibly to others carrying the same frequency, even if you never speak to them directly. Subscribe, not for content, but to remain within this stream of recognition as more layers activate. Share this with those who feel different, but cannot explain why, not to convince them, but to give their awareness language. This path does not require belief, it requires attention. The more you consciously choose alignment, the more clearly reality will respond. This is not about becoming something new. It is about allowing what you already are to operate without interference. Remain present, remain clear, remain uncompromised. The activation continues as long as you do. Stay here. Do not leave yet. This is the final threshold, and thresholds only respond to those who remain conscious while crossing them. What you do next matters more than belief, more than emotion, more than agreement. It is action that seals recognition. If you are still listening, it means your awareness is active, and active awareness must be anchored. Write 777 in the comments as a deliberate signal, a way of marking yourself as present inside this moment, rather than letting it pass through you unnoticed. This is not about numbers or ritual. It is about choice. When you comment, you are choosing to stand visibly in alignment instead of privately doubting. Subscribe now, not out of loyalty, but to stay connected to this frequency as it continues unfolding. What comes next will only make sense to those who remain within the signal long enough to recognize the patterns. Share this message with someone who feels isolated by their clarity, someone who has been punished for honesty, someone who has felt resistance without knowing why. Not everyone will receive it, and that is not your concern. The ones who are meant to will recognize themselves immediately and remain until the very end of every message that follows, because the work does not arrive all at once. It reveals itself in layers as you are ready to hold it. You are already part of this. Your attention confirms it. Your presence sustains it. And the moment you choose to acknowledge it openly, the alignment you carry stabilizes even further, activating support, connection, and momentum that cannot be forced, only allowed.